Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. We are so glad to be here with you. I am Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and this is Rockin' the Love.
Yes, it is. So, we welcome you. We welcome you to Rockin' the Love, whether you're new or you've been here before. We're glad to have you. We love it when you chat with us in the chat. So, please do. Please put your comments in there because it makes us think, right? Oh, look,
That's right.
your
Keep us engaged.
refrigerator. Oh, and there's the dog. Everyone, I think the dog has a latent like star complex because she wasn't anywhere near here, and she's like, "It's
Oh, there
time
she
for the
is,
show."
up on the couch. Hello.
All
Yes.
right, all right. So today our topic is no approval needed.
Oh my gosh. Really? No approval needed?
I don't know. Let's find out. We're going to talk about that later on. Um, so feel free to put your comments in the chat. Also, feel please like us and sign up for all of our social media stuff, even though we're super bad at keeping it up. But at some point, we will be super good at doing that, or we'll have people. And then we'll make sure we're in touch with you and letting you know when exciting things are happening. So, how's your week, Mr. Olmsted?
My week has been interesting. We were not on the air last week because I had COVID. Woohoo! Um, so myself and our godson here got to stay home and do a little extra rest for last week most of the time. And really, I just started going back out in the world again yesterday. So it's nice to be up and running.
So, it is a myth that you cannot get COVID within the next 3 months after you've had it, because Gil and I also had COVID in December.
That's true. That's true. Um, I do not know. Either it's a myth or some of the testing equipment that I used was incorrect. One of the two. Either way, I didn't feel great, and I needed a little extra rest. So there you go.
Okay, well,
What about your week? What's going on there?
my week was good. Everything feels a little overwhelming. There's a lot going on. It just feels like I'm continually going to one thing to one thing to one thing to one thing, and when I think I'm going to have a break, it's a myth. It's a myth. So, for those of you who don't know, Gil and I are married, and we are in two different parts of the world. I am in Northern California, and Gil is in
Central New
Albuquerque,
Mexico or something like that. I don't know what
Albuquerque,
is
New
considered.
Mexico. Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, yeah, it's just crazy. Last night, it was really super interesting. After we hung up the phone, I thought, oh, it's 8:30. Maybe I'll try to go to bed early. And I am a late go to bedder. I am a 2 in the morning go to bedder kind of girl. And I thought maybe I'll go to bed early. So I came downstairs and was going to do just a little work and get in bed. And all of a sudden, from upstairs, uh, our sister and our godson were having a little tiff.
Tiff, huh?
And when I say little tiff, our godson, who's 14 years old, went into hysterics, literally. And I spent the evening, finally went up there trying to separate them, calm him down, blah, blah, blah. But literally an hour and a half with him crying and wailing. And I mean, I'm talking wailing. I mean, like, this was so not about the situation. The situation, he was mad at himself that he had he had to have 7 days straight of good behavior and not breaking certain rules in order to
Get what he wanted.
get what he wanted.
Yep.
And he was on day 7.
Oh no.
He was on day 7 going to bed when he chose to have a can of whipped cream in his bedroom and proceeded to be shooting it into his mouth as he was in bed. And mom is laying in bed going, that's whipped cream. That's aerosol. That's, and so she got up and went in there and he lost his mind. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please don't start my days over. But an hour and a half where it was just like, ah, and it was like that kind of moaning that I just had to sit with him and, with my hands on him because I knew it had nothing to do with that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it just was so much bigger than that. And it was like, I literally could feel him like crying for generations of things, and it was just crazy. I mean, it was an interesting situation. So that's the kind of week I've had, to put it into short terms. It's just been like, okay, all right. Things that I don't expect to pop onto my radar. But that's life, right? But that's why we have the good news, right? So the good news, we're moving to the good news segment of our show where we talk about things going on in the world that are good, because there's so much that we read in the papers and hear on the news. And in that vein, let's just take a moment to bless this week's shooting, school shooting,
Mm, mm,
and Nashville and the students and the shooter and the teachers and our planet. Whew, a lot going on.
hmm
I'm just knowing peace. Peace, peace, peace.
Can hold that space for all of us to move into a place of value, of valuing ourselves and valuing those around us. Mm.
Yes. Okay. Tell me something good.
Hmm. You remember when you took me to Spamalot?
I do.
Very fun. Well, apparently, uh, the author of that and a member of Monty Python, Eric Idle, turns 80.
80.
80.
You
80
can
years
still be
old,
funny when you're 80?
apparently.
Gosh.
And a long life of funny, and how healing is funny. When we can look at the world and see the irony, the craziness, the parts that don't make sense, but they do in a certain way, and laugh. And
Yeah.
so I just want to say that. So that's
True.
that's one piece. And another quick one, and that is that there's a company in Switzerland that has um, developed solar panels to go in between the train tracks. So where you have all your train tracks and you already have cleared out space, you put solar panels in there and you absorb the sun between trains.
That's great.
And they figured they could actually, if they did it on the railways that it would work on, they could produce around 2% of the national energy needs from that. Pretty
That's
cool.
great. That is so great. And my story actually follows that one of my stories, and that is that in a company called Electron announced that a partnership with the Michigan Department of Transportation to establish wireless charging demonstration project, and it'll include like a mile stretch of the road to recharge electric vehicles while they drive.
Mm,
And they're expecting to launch it next year. It's already been going on in, let me see, like in Europe. It's in Europe in different
yeah.
places. So the state's going to provide 1.9 million in funding, and it's going to be carried out with Ford Automotive and other local energy companies for the electricity grid and for the electric road, and it'll just provide charging for a mile while you're driving. I think it's
Yes.
so great, and I think it's so great that it's happening in Michigan, and where there's been such a fallout in the automotive industry. Hopefully, this will help give some jobs.
Yeah, using some of the new aspects of the automotive industry to actually bolster the economy there. How cool is that?
Yep. And they did it last. They started last month, I think, uh, in Gotland and Sweden, and put in 2,000 kilometers. They want to put in 2,000 kilometers of electric highways by 2030.
Wow. So, like, I could be driving my electric car while it's charging, while my phone is in the charger that my car is charging my phone with. Everything is wireless charging.
Yep. So this actually, all that we're living right now, that makes like Maxwell Smart and the phone in the shoe. That's like antiquated, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like people are going to be like, "What's so funny about that?" in generations to come.
Yeah.
So my second story is fascinating, and it's taking place right here in Northern California. And I'm sure many of you have heard of San Quentin State Penitentiary. And this is the one of the harshest prisons in the U.S. And they are trying out a radical new method for treating the incarcerated population.
Uh-oh.
And it's new. No, you see a smile on my face. It can't be an uh-oh. That's because so this has been adopted in Scandinavia. It's a Scandinavian method of rehabilitation, and it aims at protecting um, the public, the California public, specifically because the place is here, um, by turning convicts into neighbors. So whether one believes prisoners should be punished or whatever, we let 30,000 prisoners back into society every year from California alone. So this 30,000 people are coming back into the world, the real world, without having really addressed their behaviors or what's happening in the real world. So this is called Little Scandinavia, and it allows criminals the opportunity to um, turn themselves into neighbors by they teach them throughout um, uh, they like in the prisons in the inmates have they teach them they have clean showers, go figure, clean showers with doors on them, and
Uh-huh.
they have like a communal kitchen with skillets and pots, and even they've even painted the walls in like a bright blue Dutch oven kind of thing, and they have like that the one space it serves over 50 people, but people are responsible for cleaning up after it, and they have sofas and um, uh, they're in colors like lime, and they're arranged together so the people are moving into like a congeniality and you know not just
So they're practicing being neighbors. They're
they're
creating a
practicing.
space in which to practice being with other people in a more realistic way
Right,
and a more humane way.
right. And then they have job training programs, and they work with the inmates um, on instructions in a six-figure salary career if they have like that kind of a background, and other professions like plumbing or electrical work are also taught. So I that just makes my heart sing because I just feel like it's humane. I mean, let's just start there because prisons have been relatively inhumane, and I think it also speaks to what we teach, and it's beginning to see them as human, regardless of what they've done or the situation or the circumstance that they've come from. But I just think it's a good beginning.
It's shifting from they to us,
Right.
um, and our tendency is as a society, and our justice system is to create the they. These are the people that are bad. We put them off. We forget about them. We don't care how they get treated. Just recently there was the whole thing. There's a former prison commandant or whatever the heck they're called, in Dublin, California, who's now being sentenced because of sexual assault, et cetera, at a women's prison that he was in charge of. And I'm just saying, generally speaking, that kind of holding, or that kind of accountability has not been very popular, to hold those in the prison system who are supposedly taking care of things to be accountable as well, as others. So moving in the direction of everyone's being in a more humane situation makes so much sense.
Well, yes, and you know, obviously it's all dependent on circumstances, right? And one of the people from San Quentin traveled to Scandinavia for training in the program, traveled to Norway, and uh, the Norwegian correction officer asked him what a good day on the job was like. And he replied, a good day on the job is the one where he can go home to his family safe and unassaulted. That was from him. And he asked the Norwegian fellow what a good day for him was, and he said a good day on the job sorry is when he was able to make a difference in someone's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's all perspective, but it's I mean, it makes sense. Here it's about survival.
It's about fighting against rather than having something that you're for. That's it. That's the quintessential example of that playing out in someone's profession. The difference between having a vision for what can be versus just trying to push back against the system and keep it from taking you over.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. And if you're going to work with that mentality, I mean, which is totally understandable, based on the experience, but if you're going to work with that mentality, you're going to work with the mentality of you have to win, you have to survive this day. Therefore, you're at odds with everybody just trying to,
Just
rise above
up.
it, be the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So but that, I mean, that's the kind of story I'm like, why aren't we hearing more about that? And maybe it's because people will go up in arms and get crazy about it. But I think it is a step towards mankind in the right direction.
Well, thank you for that. That's very encouraging.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that. So when we come back, well, before we go, we have to welcome Reverend Sherry Lynn out there.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry. So good to see you.
Thanks for loving on our friend who visited you on Sunday.
So that y'all don't feel like that's an inside joke. Gosh, Gil, you're making me work hard. Reverend, we all got a chance. I got a chance to see Reverend Sherry today, and they had a very exciting time over at East Bay Church of Religious Science. And she got to meet a friend of ours who was there. And so we are going to go to a commercial break, come back. And when we do, we're going to be talking about no approval needed.
Do we have approval for this break?
Sherry will spice that conversation up, I know. And the others of you out there too, we see you. We know who you are. So check in and talk to us right here on New Thought Media.
Hello.
And we're back. Thank you for joining us. This is Rockin' the Love, and I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and we have been rocking the love over this last minute or so, dancing to the music. Yay!
Okay, dancing to the music, but stop bouncing. I wanted to tell you that through the whole segment. Stop. Sorry, a little marital moment. If you want my approval, stop bouncing. So our topic today is no approval needed. And just so you know, this came from one of the themes for church last week for our spiritual centers, no approval needed. And then I was asked to do a talk on it. So I was like, oh, let's just make that our topic. So what do you have to say about that, Gilly?
Well, it made me think about, well, what the heck is approval, and why does it seem that we need it, as humans? And so one of the questions I asked was, is it a natural thing? And so one of the responses I found was that we all crave validation. It's a natural human instinct to feel accepted and liked by others, especially when it comes to decisions and things we do. We want other people to tell us that we're right on track, that we're doing things correctly, and that we're making wise choices. Does that sound familiar at all?
Absolutely.
What do you tell me?
That you're making
Good
the right choices.
job.
Good job, Gil.
Yeah, that's a very so I thought that was interesting. So there's sort of this natural thing where part of being social animals is we want to know somehow we're belonging, and that we're pleasing other people at some level, right?
Well, yes. I mean, and I mean, that said, that's what that's how we come into the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting from a young age, we're taught, you know, okay, do this. Oh, good girl. Oh, good job. We're taught to learn to walk, to talk, to, you know, poop and pee in the right place, to do it this way, to, all of those things. So it is a constant journey of reinforcement, right?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we talk about this idea of no approval needed. And I was thinking about this in terms of relationships and whether it's your job or your spouse or your kids, it doesn't matter. Um, but the issue comes into play when we move beyond just that natural kind of, wanting to know that we're in the right space and feeling good about ourselves to feeling like we've got to have the approval of others. Like we're not good enough if someone doesn't approve of us in some ways. If someone doesn't agree with us, if someone doesn't think we're doing the right thing, then wow, now what do I do? Who am I? How do I move forward? That becomes quite uh, an interesting conundrum at that point. So a psychiatrist from Nevada Mental Health says some people may constantly need approval linked to a poor sense of self-worth. We use approval to bolster our value. That approval validates us. So we look to approval to help us overcome something else, which is really a sense that we may not approve of ourselves. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Absolutely. I think, for those of us on a spiritual journey, a spiritual path, or that are, you know, lifelong learners, so to speak, and continue to check in with what our beliefs and what we're doing and what they, what they mean, if anything, and all of that. I think it is part of um, the letting go part of the journey, because it's really diving deeper into who you are. Because we can say from the beginning all the things we say, like you're perfect, whole, and complete, and uh, there's there's nothing needed, and you are a unique emanation of the divine, and you're God's spirit's child. All of those things that allude to the fact that no matter what it is, we are perfect just the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the work becomes um, the places where we feel we're imperfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And going back to, whatever we're holding on to, and whatever, because there are those things that have imprinted us along the way, right? There's situations or there's people, I'm sure everyone out there can think of a person or a situation that has stayed imprinted in their mind and held you back, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
my the one that I think I'm done with, and then I find it all the time, is when I was in fourth or fifth grade and in art class, and I went up to show my art teacher the project, and I was so proud of it. I was making a paper mache hippo. It was so good, and I went up to show it to her, and she looked at it and she went, "It's not as good as she goes, it's not like Coco or Ronnie's," and I was like, "Okay." I was done. I was done with art. I literally was done, and my mom was like, always trying to get me to take art classes. I was like, yeah, no, drama, dance, da da. She's like, okay, can you just take an art class with that? Because I was artistic. I was creative. I am creative, but her imprint at that age made me feel shame, made me feel not enough, made me feel whatever that is. So when I go to do an art project, I'm like, oh, can we do improv instead? Can we do something else? Can we do something else creative? You know,
So how do you explain that with the concept of no approval needed? How do we deal with the fact that that, you know, do we always need approval? Do we just are we really looking for recognition? Are we, do we need to be told we're the best, or do we just need to be told you're okay, you're good?
It's a great question. And I think it's probably different at different stages of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably different. I think at this point in my life, in our lives, I think we're looking we're looking more for like collaborative agreement on some level, or we're looking for, like if I go to you and I want input, it's not because I don't think my ideas are good. I'm just trying to open up and get not approval, but um a consensus, or a, I don't know what the right word is, but something that feels collaborative. And I'm trying to explore I've that I have explored all the possibilities.
Right. Right.
And Sherry says, only when you feel not whole do you need confirmation from others.
Yes, and I hear that, Sherry. That makes total sense. And what I heard in yours, Robyn, was not a sense of looking for approval as much as moving to that space where you're really going, I'm sharing this with you. This is what I have, and I'm really interested to hear if there's more I can learn or something else I can plug into this. Because not whether or not it's good, you're not taking it as, well, if you've come back with a suggestion, then that means whatever I had was wrong or not enough, or you didn't approve it. It means, how can we make it even better? How can we collaborate? How can we bring all of that stuff together?
Yeah. And I think it's a fine line. I think that what Sherry said, uh when you don't feel whole, that's when you need confirmation from others. And I think that's true, in that when you don't feel whole, you're turning away from like your intuition and your inner knowing, and and the things that we are now, in continuing to explore new thought, and things like that, we're now seeking to regain and to find out more about it, and to really be able to stand in that place of being feeling whole, and feeling and trusting, trusting that we are whole and complete.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is what I'm thinking about is the times when I have felt I really wanted someone who's close to me, someone like you or someone like that in my life, to hold me and say, you're okay. And is that seeking approval? Maybe it is. I mean, it may well be, but is it that sense of lack of self, or feeling in a space where you need to be reminded, and knowing you need to be reminded, knowing that, it's hard for you in the moment, hard for me in the moment, to access that truth about myself, that I'm looking for someone to help me do that, or something.
I don't think that's seeking approval. I think it can be. I guess it can be. And I think there's a difference between seeking approval and seeking affirmation.
Mm,
Because if you think to the way you operate, not you specifically, but the way one operates, the, the way I operate is that I will definitely go to different people when I want a different response, right?
mm,
So if you come to me, or you come to someone, in that inner circle, so to speak, you're coming to someone who knows the truth of you, who is going to stand in the same place with you, who knows where you're coming from and exactly what you need in that moment, right? Whereas if you went to your, I don't know, some adversary or your former wife or somebody, and you said, please let me, you know tell me, what do you think? You're not sure you'd get that response, right?
Right.
Because that's not where they're at. So I don't think it's the same. I don't think I think approval and affirmation, I mean, you're asking, again, it's kind of like collaboration. You're asking for the people on your team to stand with you and knowing when you can't. But we already know what you know.
So I think that's a really important distinction to make. I think there's a difference between that idea of having your circle that supports you and affirming where you're at and who you are, and keeps you moving forward, if you will, versus the need to have approval from everybody, from whoever shows up in the world. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, do we ever change what we think, or change what we share about something because we're concerned that other people aren't going to approve of us in a particular situation because of something we heard them say? Now we're not sure we want to have that particular opinion or outlook or idea in their presence. Now we're going to change it. We're going to say it as if we have something else.
Right.
And I think that's where the approval thing can become very detrimental, if you will. I mean, that's when we're using it to support, to try to bolster our value, to try to make us feel like we're validated because somehow we don't trust our own inner knowing.
Yes, and not that that's always bad, but it is a good noticing. I think as part of the journey and part of the growing, it is a good noticing depending upon where you are, to notice if you are an approval seeker,
Mm-hmm.
because it is different. I mean, if you change your position on a topic, or if you participate in gossip to fit in,
Mm-hmm.
or and it's those moments where, and we've all had them, where you find yourself in a situation like that, and you hear yourself and you're like, oh, that's not me, that's not who I believe I am, that's not what I believe in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're making decisions, about your life based on opinions of other people, even if it doesn't feel right to you, if you apologize when it's not your thought, all of those things are ways we seek approval, right? And there's so many more ways, but that's when it's about finding the balance, I think. And that's when classes and workshops and all the things that people are out there teaching, that's when it makes sense to start putting those practices and those awarenesses into place. I mean, when we can witness our behaviors like that, then we can see if we're in integrity with them,
What
right?
what about Hey Sherry, welcome back. I hope you don't mean that literally. Um, uh, what about those situations where you where people are talking about something and they're going on and talking, and somebody turns to you and you realize you don't have a clue what they're talking about, but you don't want to let on. You don't want to not not participate. You want to show up and pretend that you're as smart as they are or whatever the situation is. And so again, we're looking for approval because somehow we're not enough if we don't know about a particular topic or subject or something, you
Yeah.
know? And it's such a simple thing, Really, it's such a mundane thing, and yet it shows up and crops up, and it's a really good, as you said, it's a really good noticing to go, wow, okay, why was I so concerned there? You know,
Okay, but I have to make a disclaimer. It doesn't count when you do that in marriage, right? There's plenty of times when you're talking and I'm like, oh, oh, sorry, but it's true, right? I mean, and I know you do that with me because I catch you. So like it is, but again, like you said, it's a really good noticing. It's a good noticing in relationship because it's a good noticing. I mean, that's when you either keep going and let it go, or you weather the storm and go, I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and there's that chance that your partner, person, friend, whoever is going to say, what do you mean you weren't listening to me? You never listened to me. Or, you know, they're going to gently explain the situation, whatever. And I know for me, I have to say I am always so grateful and aware of people that do things like that. Like,
yes,
you know, that person that says that in class that goes, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're talking about. Because usually
right.
I'm sitting there going, I don't understand.
The
You know,
oneness of God is everywhere. What? I don't get that. What do you?
yeah, any of that.
Oh,
So
wait a minute. That's not okay.
it's like I admire that person out there,
Uh-huh.
and you know, so that is a great, you know, a great noticing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. Um, it's fascinating. You know, I mean, I think the idea of the topic today of no approval needed. Well, what does that mean? And I think it has to do with just the idea that when we can anchor ourselves um, into our truth, into our knowing, into trusting who we are, and we can trust ourselves, then we shift away from needing that approval, because there's really nothing anyone can approve in us. There's nothing that they can give us unless we are um, unless we are feeling lacking in our own lives. Would you agree with that?
In theory, I would agree with that. In theory, I would agree with that. I think that for me, um, trying to think because I was busy listening.
Oh
Um,
no. Stop that.
I I think there's no approval needed on the level of which, yes, we are all unique individuals that have come here, you know, via spirit, and we're each here to express in our own way and all of that. So, on the one level, there's no approval needed to be ourselves and to show up and to shine, right? And um, there are some constraints to that, in that it's gonna, or I should say, it's gonna feel like approval, whether we rename it as something else. But we all want love,
Hmm.
right? It's a basic human need. We all want love and acceptance.
Acceptance and affirmation, which I think goes back to what we were talking about before, versus approval. I think there's a difference there. There's that difference between I love you, I accept you, you're an idiot. you know, Kind of, those can all go together, versus you're really okay, you're really good, you're good, you're okay. We'll let you into the club. We like you. Which is approval. Um, you're good enough so you can participate over here. And that's different than that thing of, I see who you are, and I love you, and I accept you, and I affirm your presence as a spiritual human being in this time and place. Did I just go all preachy on that? What happened there?
Well, a little bit. No, I'm just listening. I'm just listening. I think you're right, and I think that the more that we engage in, um, for lack of a better word, approval seeking, um, the more we give away our power,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, can we stand in the truth of knowing who we are? And I think that, I had hoped to get to like some ways to do that, which we really don't have time for. But it I think part of that is letting go of the story that is holding us down, the story that is holding us back, anything that keeps us from being who we are now. Like I think when we get into you know, those situations where we're like, oh, I should have known better. I should have, when we start that shitting all over ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it's really time to re-examine, is that the truth? And what is it that, why should we have known this or that or the other thing? And so it really becomes about knowing the truth and standing in the value of that while continually exploring that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Super complicated. Can you teach the workshop on that?
Sure, sure. I'll have it whipped up by tomorrow evening. Um,
Excellent.
Interesting though that one of the things, is looking around was one of the steps I saw someone put out there in terms of, how do you overcome this need for approval, and that's to learn to accept rejection and criticism.
Right.
And the other part of that um, is not taking disagreement personally.
Yes.
And I realized, that's the basis of Miguel Ruiz and the Four Agreements is don't take it personally. And when we can move from that space of somehow however someone responds to us, or whatever the situation is, it says something about us, and move to that space of we're just gathering information, and most of it is saying something about whoever is giving us the information. It's not as much about us as it is about them usually. And also sometimes rejection, criticism, really, if we can look at it, and instead of going, well, I getting mad at it, because I wanted to be approved so much, and go, what can I learn from this? This is helpful. What am I learning? How am I growing now that I know this, that I see this?
Yes.
And I think we've all been there, and I think you make the point that, as we grow as we grow over our lives, and times change and things shift, I think that understanding becomes a little bit easier to work with, or at least it has for me.
Yeah.
Moved into a space where I can do that more. I can go, oh, okay, that wasn't what I was looking for, but
Yeah, and I think that with age and time too, we learn to alleviate some of the drama,
uh-huh.
because we're like, there's no need in going into the story for it's like, okay, here we are. This is a situation, so it allows us to move forward quicker.
Yeah, we move into the what now
Yeah.
instead
And
of happened.
yeah, I want to share this quote. What the superior man seeks is in himself. What the small man seeks is in others.
Mhm. Confucius.
Confucius says.
Wow. What the small man seeks is in others.
Because we seek approval, like you said, And
Right.
I think this is a perfect segue for our next week's guest, who will be Reverend Verona, and she will be speaking about the answer is you. And so I think it usually comes back to that answer. In my experience, the answer is you. And that is based on the Michael Beckwith book, The Answer is You. So if you want to join us next week, she's going to be talking about that as well as a class. The answer is you. And you might want to look at that book and get a feel for it, because in the end, right, it's us. If we like Sherry said at the beginning, we have to be comfortable with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
With who we are.
Hey, I just want to throw in here that if anybody is not met Rev Verona Garland, you are in for a treat, and you need to be prepared to have a little energy ready to go, because she's going to make you use it to follow along. I'm excited about that. That sounds really fun. Really fun.
I'm excited too. And I think we have some other great things coming up this month, right? We're going to be talking. Are you prepared to say anything about?
I am not prepared to say a darn thing. However, we are working on some stuff, and it's very exciting. Well, I can invite you all to Albuquerque the end of the month if you want me to do that, but that's another thing.
Okay, can you do that?
Okay, I'll do that. So I'm very excited that we have a weekend of music and magic happening here in Albuquerque. Ricky Byers will be playing a concert at Rio Grande Center on a Saturday, 29th of April, and she will be working with another person she knows doing a workshop the following day. And in the midst of all of that, we are putting together and planning for kind of a summit to bring together new thought leaders in the whole area. So it's
I believe we have a special guest that. Oh, no, we don't have a special guest.
No.
Okay.
Special.
Well, here's what I believe. I'm going to tell you what I believe. I believe there is more to this announcement. So stay tuned on New Thought Media Network so you can hear all about the upcoming events and how you can be a part of them. That's what I believe. I'm sticking to it. Okay. So with that said, I am just so grateful that you all have hung out with us, and Reverend Sherry, and I know there's more of you out there. We can see you. I feel like
feel you.
That cartoon. We see you. I see Bobby. I see Susie. What was that like when we were kids and looking out in the?
Was that Romper Room?
I don't know. Hobo Kelly, somebody. Anyway, we see you, and we just encourage you to really be who you are, because that's what keeps you rocking the love in the world. And that's what the world needs. So we'll see you next week, and keep rocking the love, everybody.
Keep rocking the love.